Jerry has a long-standing experience in managing frontline social services, and she's a qualified social worker. It was Jerry's information on the New Brunswick Family Group Conference service that inspired this webinar, and indeed several articles, more of which later. But just as a very general introduction, a bit of background information on England and Wales, the Family Group Conference was introduced by the Family Rights Group into the UK in the early 1990s. A very recent survey has found that 75% of local authorities now claim to have a Family Group Conference. But the report noticed that very few declared how the Family Group Conference is accessed. And of course, the first step into the system is so important. The Family Rights Groups, the Family Right Group advocates the Family Group Conference as a legal entitlement and asserts that this would save the country millions. And of course, many of you will know that the Family Group Conference originates from the Maori culture in New Zealand. So just before I go into the whys and wherefores of the New Brunswick service, I thought it'd be good to provide a brief overview of New Brunswick. It's a province on the east coast of Canada, one of the Maritimes. It's a bit smaller than Scotland, with a population just 1/6 of Scotland's. Many of the people there come from British, French and Irish settlers, and about First Nation peoples number over 10,000. It's officially bilingual, the only province that is bilingual, French and English being the two main languages. And this means that all documents, all laws, all information has to be provided in 2 languages. And that's quite a commitment for a small administration. Just under 2/3 of the population live in the 3 main cities. Fredericton is the capital, there's Moncton and also St John. And some of the First Nation people choose to live in First Nation reserves. The winters are harsh, in case you think of immigrating, when you hear what I have to say. So why was the Family Group Conference introduced? Well, it was the Department of Social Development's response to a number of childcare tragedies. Their baby P was Julianne, the case of Julianne. And I think this puts safeguarding centre stage, and I see the Family Group Conference as part of the safeguarding armoury. It was also influenced by a belief in W.E. Deming's 85-15 rule, discovered by scientific method, that a problem is 85% more likely to be due to a systems failure than to that of an individual or thing. And you can Google this for more information, and also on the site you'll find 14 points to managers, which are extremely interesting. The childcare tragedies were attributed to systems failure rather than to social work failings. And the department opted for the Family Group Conference after receiving expert advice from Mike Doolan, a child welfare expert from the University of Christchurch in New Zealand. And they promised that the government, that its services would improve. The government gave a grant to the department to initiate the Family Group Conference, and that would be similar to our priming bids for new initiatives. So what were the preparatory stages? Well, the department worked very closely with government. It also enlisted the interest of the press, provided explanatory articles about why, what they were doing and why. And I think this is hugely important because we all know that bad news travels further than good and that bad news sells newspapers, unfortunately. They worked with partner agencies, health, education and the police would be obvious ones, and a whole range of community groups. They worked on specialist training for the Family Group Conference roles, they worked up standards, and they also worked up monitoring arrangements, and the University of Moncton has been commissioned to carry out the monitoring. They worked on the legislative framework, And in 2008, the Family Group Conference became a legal entitlement. And this, of course, is recommended by our Family Rights Group. And what does this mean? Well, it means that social workers have to offer the service. In 2009, the Family Group Conference was fully implemented. So how does New Brunswick's service work? Well, it follows the four main Family Group Conference stages, and you can find these on the Family Rights Group website. It has very full information there. Preparation is all, of course, finding that the people who should be involved, and also explaining that the issues and also the boundaries. The meeting itself and the private session with family and friends, drawing up the plan and the department's endorsement of that plan, and finally the review. Only social workers with 5 years post-qualifying experience can apply to work in the service, so these are very mature professionals. They're solution-focused and problem-solving therapies are core training components, and training is ongoing. There's an emphasis on no blame, no shame culture. People have to just work with things as they are. It's no good blaming somebody for their addictions or violence or failures to look after their children. These issues have to be faced. And families are urged to focus on solutions. They're helped to focus on the solutions. The voice of the child is extremely important, what the child wants. And as just an aside here, we talk about foster care, which sounds very warm, doesn't it? But they talk about stranger care, and I think this is a very child-centred perspective of the issues at stake. They adopt a sensitive approach. Families are offered a choice of venue and menu, and an evening meal can be provided if the conference runs on. And the venue is very rarely the office. People mostly choose perhaps church halls, schools, or hotels. And it's useful to have a gym on hand where a child can kick off if they're feeling frustrated. So what are the outcomes? Well, within the first year, there was an almost 20% reduction of children before the courts and in state care. And 8 years on, and it's still current, this figure is now 25%. So, and these figures can be checked on the government website. This made huge dollar savings. We are in Canada, and the dollars saved were invested in the workforce. More social workers, smaller caseloads, more intensive work with families has helped to increase the decrease of children in state care. And social work caseloads have reduced dramatically. On average, these now stand at 7 families per social worker. And children are thought to be safer. Of course, there are more eyes and ears on the family, and people knowing what to do and not feeling alienated. They can ask the authorities for help. Approximately only 25% of families opt for the Family Group Conference, but this has having a huge impact. And the users of the service report very high satisfaction rates on feedback tools. I believe this is just over 90%. So what are the likely ingredients of New Brunswick's success? Well, very careful preparation. It took 3 years. They gained political will. They met their promise, and they evaluated the service to show that they'd met their promise. They engaged the press, and I have to repeat here, bad news travels further than good, and bad news sells newspapers. Our stories are potentially juicy. We have a huge job to do. They prepared their partner agencies and others. The social workers are very experienced and specially trained. They work therapeutically, and they are able to work therapeutically because of the smaller caseloads. There was a reinvestment of dollar savings, and the money wasn't hived off elsewhere. And there's an emphasis on making families feel comfortable, and the no blame focus. I think this is so important because blame can so easily shut down cooperation. And the families and social workers were shown to be working together, maximising each other's strengths. And on that point, I think it's a very important casework consideration that the New Brunswick model demonstrates how families and social workers can work together to enhance each other's potential to achieve mutually desired goals. It's about social work direction and support matched by family creativity. And I offer this as a conceptual framework to guide family work. which I see as the bread and butter of social work, in spite of these so-called child-centred and patient-centred work. Don't forget the family context. In summary, I've explained why the department chose the family group conference, how it was implemented, and with what effect. I hope the numbers 85-15, the heaven of 7, and the 25% are memorable and stimulate further thought. The reduced incidence of separation anxiety, which we know is so damaging, and families feeling supported and not alienated, and the likely impact on generations to come. Just as an update, there are plans for trialling the family group conference in adult protection and long-term care next year. I'm very grateful to Jerry and also her colleagues, and also I'd like to add Professor Jill Manthorpe, the Director of the Social Care Workforce Research Unit, who has supported me in this preparation and in this presentation, and also Professor Shula Ramon, who was my former PhD supervisor, for highlighting to me the importance of role theory. We have identified further reading for you. If you're really pushed for time and don't have time to do much reading, I would recommend the 6 case studies, but also the others if you have time. There's another article in the pipeline on role theory and families and social workers working together, and this will be available to anyone who's interested. So all this is just a click away. So thank you for listening, and I'll hand you back to Tonia, and then perhaps we'll hear from Jerry if she's online.
Yeah,
Many thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. Yes, with the magical wonders of technology, we've been informed that Geraldine is with us. And she is currently, she's in Canada in New Brunswick, and she will be contributing on the New Brunswick model of family group conferencing. So she should be able to chime in now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wow, it works. Lovely. Well done, Joan. I think you've covered most of what we've spoken about. The one thing that I'd like to highlight, however, that the social workers in New Brunswick are very, very proud of the work they do. The morale of people working in this service is high. There was a time when we worked in child welfare and we didn't tell people because we were the people who went around stealing children. That's not the case anymore. People feel that they're working with families and they're helping children, and it's really quite a nice place to work.
It's fantastic to hear.
And if there's any questions, I'm here.
Yeah, we will really encourage those of you that have joined us to send through your questions, and we can ask Geraldine and Joan to answer them. The other modern wonders of technology. So the first question is, from the information we have seen so far, this model is primarily focused on children. Does this model have a similar effect and impact to working with adults? And if so, can this approach be used in adult services?
Right, well I think Jerry's answered, they've answered that in New Brunswick, they're going to trial it over there. And I understand that, I think Essex has already tried it in mental health services. And I see, yes, that it should be transferable to other situations and older people as well. And I think one of the points when I met Mark Gagnon with Jerry in Moncton, the point was made that children in long-term care as well, you know, children in long-term care so often leave without any kinship contacts. Well, they're trying it for long-term care as well. So I think any sort of situation, and it's a question when I see children into care, which I hated doing, it was always about trying to keep the home fires burning, wasn't it? But children in long-term care, you can still find the family, and it's amazing what you can do to try and sort of restore family contact through the conference. development.
Yeah.
So I would almost think any social work situation really that any can bring family in. I believe so much in family being bread and butter of social work.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole family approach that gets forgotten, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Actually, we focus upon children, that they are the centre, and we make decisions as opposed to the family making decisions, which is what this is about. And I think that gets forgotten about the Children Act, is that actually the whole reason behind it was to keep children safe, but to keep families together. And that gets forgotten. I'm not sure whether that transpires from other parts of the world, especially Canada. We've got Geraldine to answer.
Yeah, we started in child welfare and child protection. Then we moved into children under permanent care, as Joan said earlier, to try to reunite them before they left care with their families. We're moving into adult services, and we're also starting some work in New Brunswick with public safety, with the justice system. So yes, the principles are the same in getting families together and giving families the strength and the power to make decisions because they know themselves the best. So you can apply it to adults easily.
Okay, do we have any other questions? We don't have any as of yet coming through, but I will encourage you to ask as many questions as you can as we go through, and we'll try and keep this as lively as possible and as engaging as possible as we can with you at home. But next we have speaking is Natalie Rushton. Natalie is a newly qualified social worker, fresh off the press, but she's been working within the social work field for 15 years and has been, was trained as a family group conference coordinator practitioner 18 months ago. So Natalie has also a wealth of knowledge in this field, and she's very much going to be focusing upon her experiences, the successes, failures, and the understanding of family group conferencing, particularly around this local area, so the West Midlands of the UK.
Lovely, thank you. So yes, as Tonia says, I've been working as a family group conference coordinator for the past 18 months. So it's I need to make it clear that I'm talking from the experience as a coordinator. So although I am a qualified social worker, that's not the position that I'm coming from, in the sense that I'm an independent family group conference coordinator working with families within the West Midlands area. So looking at the experiences, the successes and the failures, I've put together a couple of notes really with colleagues of mine really. So it's not an exclusive list, this is just my personal and my colleagues' experiences really over the last 18 months. Okay, so looking at sort of my experiences, my first point really comes under sort of the explanation to families. What we're finding is, oh, good point, Joan. I knew I'd forget to click. Okay. Is that we're not to assume that others are doing their role. When we walk in as family group conference coordinators, there's an expectation that families have an understanding or be brief understanding of what the family group conference process looks like. However, the experiences are that this actually hasn't been the case on a lot of occasions really. It does appear that families are being sold the idea of a family group conference as being part of maybe a child protection process without really believing or having explained to them the benefits of what a family group conference can do for them and their family. This can obviously appear a bit like lip service and can possibly become a bit of a tick box exercise really, which is not going to benefit the family, and we're not, in that sense, we're not giving families enough credit. When faced with a bottom line within the family group conference, families really are usually able to pull together and make decisions as long as they feel that they have some kind of control and a part of the decision making and can actually work in partnership with the social worker and other professionals. On occasions, we found that social workers don't really like the children attending the family group conference, and denying the child the opportunity to actually take part, which, you know, I can understand that we have to balance, there's a balance between the protection and participation, and we feel like we're protecting the children from hearing certain conversations or not taking part. However, the reality is the children will be in absolutely no worse position by being involved in the process. Usually the families that we are involved in are child protection cases or children that are potentially being taken into care. So these children are children that have usually seen a lot and heard a lot already, but the family group conference is not actually about going over old ground. That's not what the process is. It's about moving forward and coming up with a plan on how to make things better. So it's not about placing blame, it is actually about moving forward. So children are entitled to participate in the family group conference as equal members of the family. The feedback that I've had is that they feel more positive than negative about it, and they actually want to take part. Therefore, it's our role to respect children's engagement in decisions that actually affect them. By recognising the child's life in the here and now, they are experts in their own lives, which we've heard that so many times, but it gives the child an opportunity to build relationships with wider family members and friends, and they can also see who's there to love and support them, and this then develops a sense of worth within their own social network, and it gives them a belief that they can kind of stand up for themselves in one sense. The other point that I've made is it is important to always offer the children the opportunity to have an advocate. In my experience, if offered, children will always take the option of having an advocate, as they provide support with negotiation, and as the advocate can actually stay present within family time, it provides the child with a form of protection and security. It's also not unusual for children to use the advocate to discuss ideas that are presented within the conference, as it gives the child someone who is completely independent who will support their decisions without judgment. Remember to click. I've just, you know, these are just some comments that children have made to me in the past, really. And as you can see, children are aware of what is going on, and they would much rather be involved in the process than feel like that they're being left out. Okay, now we're going to sort of look at some of the successes and some of the, I don't like to use the word failures, but things that haven't possibly worked so well. Obviously, an indication of a successful family group conference is a signed plan. This is when the family and the social worker can agree on actions for the family to do, and it is signed and put together as a kind of an action plan, really. It's good to see families and the social workers working together and agreeing a way forward. However, what I would like to say is it's not always a negative if the plan's not signed. Sometimes when a family group conference takes place, this is the first time that family members and friends have been together in a room to discuss the issues at hand. So although a plan may not be agreed or may not be signed, I don't like to see it as a failure. I like to see it as a step in the right direction, because it's given the family an opportunity to come together and discuss ideas. It's also good when you can actually feel the voice of the child coming through the plan, as this means that the family were able to put the child at the centre and see things from their perspective. When children and families also feedback that they felt listened to, even if they don't always get what they want from the plan. When families leave the conference believing in themselves and actually having more confidence that they can achieve the goals. I think an indicator where a conference maybe hasn't particularly worked very well is when families cannot move away from the blame culture, and sometimes that comes from the social worker too, unfortunately. By continually going over old ground and pointing the finger at someone else, they're not able to put the child first and move forward. Okay, yeah, I think a good point to make is, as I said previously, because this is the first time families have come together, there will always be an element of finger pointing and blame. I think some people just like to get things off their chest, but as long as the conference doesn't focus mainly on that, and it doesn't dominate the family group conference. And I think that's a skill that us coordinators need really, is to be able to move the conference forward. However, on some occasions this just isn't the case. The main point is it can be frustrating when families don't engage in the process. This can be for a number of reasons. A lack of understanding of the family group conference, of the process, and this again comes down to how professionals have explained the process to families. It's also about identifying families at the right point. So often the family group conference is the family's last chance before possibly care proceedings, whereas research does show us, I think Joan's also pointed out, that if a family group conference is offered at an earlier stage, at possibly an early health stage, maybe families would be more open to engage. The other downside really is that unfortunately for professionals, you know, old habits die hard, and it can be difficult for professionals to not try and take over the conference, because, you know, we do want to help families, we do want to direct them, and sometimes that can become a little bit dominant within the conference really, and it kind of misses the point that the families are there to make those decisions themselves. Also, professionals do find it hard to accept that they're not allowed to take any form of notes, which, you know, like I say, I think that's an old habit really. Okay, so uptake is increasing. There has been an increase in the number of family group conferences taking place. Again, as Joan pointed out, many local authorities have specific teams. I am aware that many of the West Midlands local authorities do have specific teams that look at family group conferences. We're also seeing it being fed down from other professionals and also the courts as well. However, I personally believe that this needs to be embedded into practice and taught within social work training, and also within inductions when social workers start, obviously, their new positions. Obviously, this can be a problem, as many services are experiencing and do experiencing high staff turnover. And I think that's why it's important that we maybe look at embedding this at the early health stage, and, like I say, within training. This then also avoids the stigma of social work that some families use to refuse the help, and obviously families then become aware of it a little bit more earlier. Going back to a point that I made earlier, the child is in no worse position if the family group conference does not work. So it is worth trying the family group conference really. And lastly, we really need social workers and professionals to start spreading the word, because family group conferencing does work.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to open it out to those of you that have joined us to send in your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to work through those together. Just hearing about kind of the three different perspectives, though, there very much kind of seems to be the key is in, you know, the education, the morale of social workers, and that working together. So that seems, those seem to be the key things that are coming through for me. I mean, have you found that here family group conferencing seems to be that kind of last minute tool, weapon kind of a thing, as opposed to let's use this as an early intervention, and let's work through the best that we can together and come up with a plan, as opposed to we need to do this now just to say that we've done it.
Absolutely, because I think, you know, some of the parents and the families that I've encountered when they are offered a family group conference is they're very, they've been in the system for maybe a long time, and some of them are just like, oh, well, what's the point? What's the point? It's just, you know, it's not going to get me anywhere. Whereas I think if it's embedded a little bit earlier, and it then avoids the stigma of social work, and it gives the family a little bit more of an opportunity to make those changes.
Do you feel that that kind of attitude is within social workers as well?
Yes. Yeah, I think, I mean, personally, just speaking to some of the social workers with the cases, it is just maybe a lack of understanding of the process, really. You know, as Joan pointed out, it's solution focused, it's strengths based, it's nothing new, it's nothing, you know, it's things that we are aware of. I think it's just been allowing it to be offered at that earlier stage, really. I do feel, you know, we are stuck with time constraints, And I think that is the difficulty really that social workers are experiencing, you know, at that high-end sort of care proceedings, child protection. They're up against sort of...
You've got your 26 weeks.
Exactly.
Can you really change or make a plan in 26 weeks?
This is it. And, you know, I mean, families, I think when they are faced with that bottom line of, you know, this is what's going to happen if you don't make these changes, they do want to step up and they do want to make those changes. I think it's just, I don't know, it's this with them, someone standing over them sort of saying or else, you know, it can be very difficult.
Do you think that the focus on the no blame culture is quite a discipline? It's a discipline hard to acquire.
It is.
And that's something that needs an awful lot of skilled training and also skilled putting it over to families, really.
Absolutely.
That this is going to be negative and also it could actually shut down on cooperation or jeopardise cooperation of all the parties concerned.
Yeah.
And so really, in a sense, it's really quite skilled psychotherapeutic work, isn't it, that you're engaging in. It might not have this sexy title as psychotherapeutic, but, you know, it is that, isn't it? It's very much in a very practical and down-to-earth way and a reality-based way. That's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I have also found that, you know, being independent and not being part of, you know, not being a social worker within what we're working with that family, it does help. It does help when you're trying to engage them because I'm there independently. I'm not there as their social worker. I don't know. As a family group conference coordinator, you know, I have a very, very brief outline of the issues of the family. I don't know the details. I don't have to keep case files. I don't have to take notes. So it's easier for me to be independent and to say to them, you know, this is about moving forward. This isn't about what's happened in the past. This is about, you know, whereas I think the social workers are working with these families with a multitude of issues and it's very difficult for them, I think, to manage a conference as well as everything else that they have to do with the families, really.
You've both touched on social work education, that it tends to be this form of working with a family seems to be missing from social work education. I'm not sure whether, Geraldine, whether you know whether that's different in Canada?
No, it isn't different in Canada. The Department of Social Development actually had to invest significantly in training. We invested in interest-based solution, conflict resolution type stuff. We invested significantly in family therapy. No, the government had to do that once we had the social workers.
Right. So once you've kind of got the evidence based, then they change their minds.
Yeah.
I just wonder, Jerry, whether you could explain to us who the family group coordinators are employed by, because I know that Natalie isn't part of social services, so are the family group coordinators employed by the Department of Social Development?
Yes, in Brunswick, they are part of the Department of Social Development, but they're not part of the child welfare system. They're two different, and that is important that they be kept separate, as Natalie described there earlier, so that you can come in completely independent and you have the brief outline of what the family dynamics are, but you don't have all the history, you don't have all the background. But they are part of government. They are part of the Department of Social Development. Simply two very separate units.
So over here, of course, I think we've got a variety of arrangements, haven't we? So I'm not expert on the family group conference, I have to say. I'm just picked up on the wonderful service in New Brunswick, but I think that in some areas the voluntary organisation will be commissioned to offer the service or to provide the service on behalf of the local authority, and some local authorities provide them directly, I think, and then who are working with, is it with CAFCAS or?
No, with the family group conferencing, it's family action. So
right. Oh, right. Okay. So okay. So there are different ways of it being provided.
Yes.
In here.
I think a lot of the social services, local authorities, particularly around the West Midlands area, are looking at newer models of delivering service. So they've got the restorative practices, which they're trying to introduce, which is then changing the views of practitioners that have been in the field for a long time.
So perhaps we could encourage them to go to New Brunswick.
Field trip, come.
Yay! Was that a question, Geraldine?
Come.
Oh, so,
No, just come.
gladly, yes, gladly. We have, and we've touched on it briefly, another question that's come through is the same kind of theme as what we're trying to portray really, is that typical family group conferences are used at the point where the family are in crisis of court, court processes, and where there are very serious concerns. Should we be looking at this as a part of the early intervention or the child in need processing?
Absolutely. I am aware that Birmingham in particular are looking at doing that. They are looking at offering that at an early health stage. So it is being recognised. I think it is being picked up more and more. As I say, lots of local authorities do have their own teams and do offer that sort of support. But I genuinely do believe that it would be more beneficial at an early health stage.
In New Brunswick, we cannot go to court without having offered to the family group conference, and that's in our legislation.
Oh, right, okay. Maybe that's something we need to take on board.
Yes, that's right. Incidentally, we're hoping that this may be written up for people to see some of these ideas that are coming out and different ways of delivering the service need to be sort of catalogued, really, don't they?
Yeah. We have another question. Given that family group conferences were only introduced in the last 7 to 10 years in the UK, is it true that we need to rethink the family group conference as only being used in CP or court processes, to child protection court processes?
Yeah, that's the same as the previous question. I think everybody's picking up the same thing, really.
Yes, yes.
This is something that needs to be offered at
But also, I mean, it's all lost at the crisis stage because in my experience, which is a long time ago, of course, but we used to talk about crises as being a window of opportunity. And, you know, if someone's really got bottom line and they've had so many, if you like, warnings and et cetera, and then it becomes really clear that, you know, the child might have to come into care, perhaps then the sword of Damocles over their heads, being reality rather than finger pointing, that people might then galvanise their resources and try and think in a different direction and be more persuadable. So is all lost at the point of crisis? I question that, actually.
No, I mean, I've worked with families who have been at the point of crisis, and it has worked. It really has. I just think, you know, we need to sort of spread the word, and it comes down to, is this a fundamental right for families? Should families be able to access a family group conference, which, you know, some of the things we've kind of touched on today, really, then possibly yes.
Yeah. And possibly it needs to be done at, you know, at the stages without social care intervention, so beyond child in need, beyond child protection, you know, offered within nurseries, schools, areas where, you know, they can then access it out of social care services.
Absolutely, and I think families just are not aware of family group conferencing until the point of crisis, which, you know, if that information was available to them, you know, maybe they would be more able to make arrangements with their family support worker, with their, you know, head teacher or someone to try and make these things work. It doesn't always have to involve a social worker.
I think it should be a legal entitlement, actually. I mean, it is such a brave thing to take a child from its family and children from their family, that every effort ought to be made to keep them together. And if this is it has been shown to be so successful, can be successful if it's implemented properly, which it is in New Brunswick, then you know, I think that it's certainly a human right, a very fundamental. It's Article 8, isn't it? Yeah, the right to private and family life. Absolutely.
We'd like to know your thoughts, those of you that have joined us, whether you do think it's a human right, because that's one of our overarching questions, and as panel members we believe that it is. So we'd like to hear from you and to see whether you agree or disagree with us on that, which would be really interesting. We have another question. Having learnt from role play training sessions about initial child protection conferences, would a role play training in family group conferencing help social workers understand the processes and benefits better?
Absolutely. I mean, as part of my training to be a coordinator, the role play was a large part, and we were able to see things from different perspectives, from the child's perspective, from the mother, the father, even the advocate. So definitely, absolutely, I think it would benefit. And again, it comes back to the being embedded in training and induction, which, you know, the big problem we have with everything is time. And, you know, having just gone through the degree, I know it would be difficult to put that into, with it, you know, as a time constraint really. But
I couldn't agree with you more, but I would also throw into the mix that we are focused more purely on risks,
absolutely,
absolutely, and that takes over anything else really, and any other solution focused work, risk overtakes, and we seem to be battling and fighting fire and fire.
But family group conference, of course, spreads the risk, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because you've got more eyes and ears on the situation. If you know, if people wish to cooperate with the service.
So yeah, I would agree that role playing, social work role playing in education, that would be beneficial. And we're only speaking from our perspective. I mean, both myself and Natalie, I'm a little bit further on than Natalie, but we both are essentially newly qualified social workers. We haven't been qualified very long, and we both went to different universities, yet we both have had similar experiences that this isn't on the curriculum. It isn't embedded into social work education, which is a shame.
For any first timers, I would actually really recommend that they read the 6 case studies, because they do, which is on the reading list, which really is a role play in itself. They really are very realistic. Obviously, they're combination of experiences, but it also provides a flip chart in the back, which is a mock flip chart, obviously, but it really does show the process, and I think you could build up some role play from those 6 case studies, and that's a really good training material.
Really is. And that's found at the end of Joan's slide, so you'll be able to find that there. And maybe those of you that are students that have joined us, perhaps you can take it back to your university setting and try and integrate it that way. You know, we are all about professional development and trying to strive the social work field forward. So you're the voice really, so take it back.
Spread the word.
Take it back.
And those case studies were actually compiled by frontline social workers.
Yeah. We have another question. Someone from New Brunswick. Yeah, hi from New Brunswick. Great to be a part of this. It's the child's right to have. It's the child's right to have the family present and plan for their safety.
Family present a plan for their safety.
Family group conference in New Brunswick. I think I've only got half of that question through.
Technology.
Yeah. But I think what you're trying to say is, you know, it is a right to have that child and a right for them to have a plan in place.
Well, in fact, they wouldn't have the conference without the child, I think, in New Brunswick. I mean, there's just no question.
Yeah.
Isn't that right, Jerry?
That's right.
Yeah. And do you know of any, I know I'm just throwing this out there, but whether you know of any kind of research or studies where it's come back where they have spoken to children to see whether they found it beneficial.
They have in
Brunswick.
Yes, and they have. You'll find them in the 6 case.
In the 6 cases.
Yes.
You'll see the comments from the children, but also the previous presenter had comments from children as well. So.
Brilliant.
I think the children do welcome being involved, they want to be involved, and I'll never forget that one child that says to me, all these people are here for me.
Well, that's the thing.
They're here for me. And it's just that, you know, knowing that everyone, that just meant the world to them, you know, that everybody had come together for them to put this plan together, and that they were also able to have a say and have a voice through them, which, you know, is a really big part. And I think, like you said previously, Tonia, about, you know, it's balancing this, you know, sort of protection and participation, because we as social workers deal with the fighting fire with fire, really, the child protection, and I think it's just missed this. It's not wanting, sometimes we don't want children to be involved in that, we don't want them, it's stopping them from seeing and hearing some of the things, whereas, you know, cases show that they've heard, they've seen everything that's gone on, they know why they're there, they know what's going on with their family. And I think by excluding them, we're sort of saying, well, no, you're not important to make decisions within this family, whereas really they are the centre of it, you know, and they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're having another question come through, so I'm just waiting.
Right. Is it?
I'm a newly qualified social worker in Bristol. Hello to Bristol.
And a newly qualified social worker.
And have not come across family group conferences before in practice, and I do not recall learning about them at uni. Under the Signs of Safety model, practitioners in Bristol are using family meetings to create safety plans, pull family members together to identify available support. Do you know if Bristol use family group conferences? It would seem as though practitioners are using family meetings which they facilitate instead.
The process that she's explained sounds similar. It sounds more or less the same as what a family group conference is. They've just repackaged it in some way.
But it sounds as if the social work practitioners are leading that, which is not what a family group conference is.
I think the main part of a family group conference is the private family time. It is the fact that the process is not run by professionals. They are not involved. As I say, we don't take notes. Even me as a facilitator, all I do is make introductions. You know, we have the social worker explain the reason why we're there and what the bottom line is. But we also come away from that meeting and we leave the family there to make those decisions and to come up with the plan themselves. It is not our responsibility as social workers, facilitators, or any other professionals really to make those decisions. That is the main part of a family group conference, is the private family time. And it's giving them back the power, because at the end of the day, no one knows their family like the family themselves. So it's giving them the sort of the power really to make those decisions and to come up with some ideas on how they can move forward.
We're not sure whether it's used in Bristol. I think when we were trying to do a bit of research into the areas that it was used within the UK, we were running pretty dry.
We found Leeds.
We found Leeds.
They found Leeds.
Yes. Leeds. That pretty much we kind of hit a roadblock with that.
Yes. I did try to encourage Leeds to participate, but didn't get very far with that. So, but they're having similar results to New Brunswick. Not quite as good, I think, but they haven't been running as long. So, yeah.
And again, we're waiting for your questions to come through so we can answer as best as we can.
I just wondered about the issue of the private family time, and of course, you know, some of the family scenarios that we've been involved in, there's been quite a lot of violence. Whether there are, how risk is managed, a risk assessment, is a risk assessment made before the private family family time. You know, you might be, and also where are the meetings held? You know.
Okay. It does all fall back, in my experience anyway, fall back with the family. As it's my job as a coordinator to meet every person that attends that conference. The conference is owned by the child, so it would be my responsibility to speak to the child, find out who it is that they want there. I mean, I've had occasions where, you know, families have come up with people and the children have gone, oh, what about so-and-so, what about so-and-so? And we've gone, okay, you know, that's fine. But then it's up to me then to go and speak to all of these individuals to explain what the process is about. And basically we only invite people to a conference if they can bring something to the table, if they can help that child in any way, shape or form. It's not a free-for-all, it's not for everyone in the street to come along and have a cup of tea and a chat really. It is for friends and family for that child who can make a difference really. So with regards to risk, like I say, it is my responsibility to speak to all of the individuals involved. I'm not saying violence doesn't take place. I have had occasions where things have become quite, especially if there's separated families involved, things can get a little bit, but then it's my job then to bring it back to why are we here? We are here for the children. This isn't about you. This isn't about, and that's where we come back to the blame and the pointing of the finger. It's about trying to get families to move past that and to move forward and to not talk about he said, she said, and who did what. It's about right, how we're going to make things better now, and directing them, which usually works really. And also, when the children are present in the room, you do find that families become quite calm, and even if children can't be there, I've always asked families to bring pictures of the children. I mean, I had one dad that he was a very small child, and he just plastered the wall with pictures, which was lovely because we were able to just continually refer to the child by name. It wasn't, and it felt like they were present, and which was lovely. So, you know, it's about keeping them on track, and the children are very vocal within the conferences. They're very, you know, they do like to say their piece. They do like to sort of say, well, what about this and what about that? Or no, I don't like that and I don't like that. So whilst risk, yes, is an issue, I think it is managed, you know, we do sort of manage it well.
I wondered how Jerry's experiences with that.
I'm not a family group conference coordinator, and I see that you've got somebody there in your own country that's quite enthralled and passionate about it. I haven't heard of any violence. But families know each other, and you know, even if it's the uncle that drinks too much, or the brother that just came out of prison, they know how to deal with these people. So I'm not sure I can add much more than what was just said, but it gets worked out, you know, and families stay in that room for as long as it takes.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's just that it does sound as though they're given time to take as long as they need to breathe, or in New Brunswick they're delivered pizza, or they can have time out in the gym and things like that.
Yeah. I think, you know, my experience is we speak to the children about where would they like their meeting. You know, some children like it in their school, some have chosen like a community hall, and then the children get to choose the menu. Which, you know, but you've got no takeaway. I'm not going to McDonald's, but you know, and they love that. They absolutely love that because they feel then that they own it. That, you know, when they go to that meeting, they can see that there's people there that they've invited, that there's food there that they've chose. So they don't feel like, you know, that they're an outsider or someone that's just been sort of told what to do, really. And yes, it does take as long as they need, which for some, it can be immediate. It can be they know, right, this is what we want to do. But for others, they do need to thrash it out. I mean, I had one family once, I was expecting 10 and 18 members turned up. So it was about speaking to them individually and about whether they could contribute positively. And that did take 5 hours. I think that's my longest one that I've done. But yeah, and it is sort of saying to them, look, this is your time, this is up to you, use it, you know, and they will do some work or have a chat and then go, right, now I need a coffee, I need a break, I need, you know, and then I dip in, dip out, make sure that they're sort of staying on track. So it is very informal, and it's about conveying that to families really. This is your conference, not mine, not your social workers, not your family support worker, not, you know, it's yours, you own this.
Do they have a flip chart as well?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I tend to sort of write down the bottom line or what the things are that the children's services are asking them, because it, you know, they can forget or they can. And I think visual aids are just great to have them write that this is what we're addressing, you know, and the children will get up and draw and sometimes, you know, draw some of the things that they want, which is always good.
Yeah. Are you present during the private meeting?
No. Family time, no. All professionals come out of, what I tend to do is, as a coordinator, we go back in every 10, 15 minutes, check that everything's okay, you know, check that they're on track, and, you know, and work with the advocate really, that they're there for the child. I think once the children have said their piece, they can come out. The advocate only stays present if the children are present. So if the children come out, the advocate doesn't stay in the meeting. They are there specifically for the children. So, you know, there are occasions where things need to be said that the children aren't present for, but that's why we provide, you know, I've always got a bag full of goodies, as most social workers do, to keep children occupied, and that's why, you know, some thought does need to go into where the venue is, because, you know.
How many have you done in the last month?
Because I've been allocated one today,
yes.
Because I've just qualified, I've been doing my sort of final assignments at uni,
yes,
I haven't done any, but over the 18 months I've done about, I don't know, about 12, 13, something like that. They average, they sort of take about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks really for a conference really.
Yes, 26 days. Yeah.
We have a comment. I do believe it is a human right. I myself have been an advocate in family group conferences, and the children I worked with really appreciated having me there. So as you were just saying, the family was in crisis, and they've managed to turn it around with support. Good, that's good. We have another comment. I believe that whilst it is a human right for parents, it is also the right of a child to be brought up in a safe environment where all their needs will be met to a good enough standard.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would all agree.
Absolutely.
We would all agree with that. We have a question. What may be the pitfalls of family group conferencing?
I think sort of going back to some of the points that I possibly made earlier with regards to, and you know, I don't sort of want to go over old ground. I think some of the pitfalls are when it is used too late for the family really.
Do you feel that one of the pitfalls for the family may be that they're given this opportunity and this is going to be their plan, and hopefully they will turn it around as a family, but when it doesn't quite go to plan, do you think that they, or the social say, well, this hasn't worked, so we're still going to go down this legal route? They feel disappointed and disheartened and let down by the process?
Yeah, I think if I sort of reflect a little bit on possibly my last case really, that is kind of what happened. It was, you know, they could agree half of the plan really, but the social, it wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough, and it was, well, hang on, we need to work with this family because there's other aspects affecting them really, and the fact that the family had all turned up and were like, yes, we are willing to help, and this is what we can do, but someone standing over them saying it's not good enough, it's not good enough, it is really difficult. But then, you know, that can come back down to, as a social worker, we do have the time constraints and all of the issues that affect our job, but the families don't see that, and they don't need to see that. You know, and again, it's whether that family had been involved in the process just too late. If it had been offered a step earlier, then possibly it might have worked for them.
I just wonder from your perspective, Joan, whether you've seen over the length of your career, whether you've seen opportunities in the past where this could have been used or was used and then it's been forgotten, because social work changes, doesn't it? It evolves, and then it evolves into something else, and whether...
I'm sure there are times when it could have been used, and that also that we could have been far more creative. I remember working when I started in the London Borough of Greenwich when I was the magic age of 22, very young, and I was working in the London GLC, Greater London Council Overs Bill. Families were sort of farmed out into these flats, 4 levels, I think, of flats, and sort of it became a bit of a ghetto, really. We had various ghettos around London, when children had been abandoned, or the mothers, very often single mothers, they'd left their children overnight and sort of to go out, and they were young mothers. They needed their space, really. They needed a bit of their youth. Okay, they'd had their children young, but they're biologically made to have children young. And they didn't wait. That was how it was. And if somehow we'd got the community together, the family, not perhaps family because perhaps they didn't have family, but they had neighbours and they had friends. If we could have had meetings there, and perhaps someone could have said, well, I'll babysit for you, and that kind of, we could have been far more creative.
Yeah.
Instead, we had this poor mother. I remember her, well, she was a very attractive woman, and she had her 4 children, and they were in temporary care, duly presented towards Greenwich Crown Court, and much to my seniors' absolute fury, this mother just batted her eyelashes at the magistrate, and lo and behold, the children were returned to her care. I think perhaps the magistrate was right, because being in care is not the golden answer, as we know. So yes, it was annoying for us because we had to plod around and supervise a bit more, but I think in the long run, much better for the family. But if we had managed to be a bit more creative with our services and had more discussion around the children where they were, there might have been fewer in care.
But I think Joan touched on a good point, really, and maybe that's because of the title Family Group Conference. I think people think that it's just members of the family that can come, and that's not the case. It's friends, it's people that anyone that is close to the family that can offer some kind of support. So, like you
It's a
said,
significant person, and the old proverb, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah,
and that comes round over and over again, and actually there's value in that, and we need to take that on board.
And some of these communities where we say, oh, there are a lot of problems in the area, actually there's a lot of potential richness there, in terms of what they can offer.
Definitely. We've got another comment. This isn't taught in Northern Ireland. I'm a social work student in Northern Ireland, so this is very interesting.
Northern Ireland?
Yeah,
New Brunswick.
So we'll be looking to you to take this back to the university and try and embed it in. Yeah.
And the 6 case studies.
Yes, take them back.
it's interesting though, isn't it, that we're consistently seeing the lack of knowledge, and this is supporting, so really people are only finding out about it when they hit that role. When you become a social worker, it's all of a sudden. So then, and with the pressures that are around social work at the moment, it needs to be embedded in induction and in training, because otherwise, how can they sell it to a family if we're now saying, well, I wasn't trained in it, or you wasn't trained, I don't know about it. So how can then we as coordinators expect social workers to go into families and say, this is a real benefit. This isn't just a tick box exercise. This can really benefit you and your family. So, run with it. And I think this is the crux of it, really, is somehow we need to, I don't know, spread the word a little bit more, or and if I take a step back, when I first started this role, you know, I am working with sort of families within the local area, and the organisation I work for put on training for social workers for them to attend so they could understand the process. You know, and it did increase with time. The more we put it on, the more attended. But again, it's down to caseloads and everything else that comes with being a social worker. It is difficult to down tools and say, right, okay, I need to learn about this. I need to. So then, should it come back to social work training, and should it be embedded in the degree?
What about our professional association? Why hasn't it been in professional social work? I think the only article that's been in professional social work, Jerry and I sort of worked on, was about 2 years ago, when it compared to, the article compared what were presented against how working conditions in England and Wales and the golden scenario of New Brunswick. I mean, why hasn't BASW promoted the family group conference? I just think that we're in a wonderful position to do these things, and we're not bogged down by caseloads.
We may have had a bit of an advantage in New Brunswick because all the staff were all within the same government department, and we made it mandatory for family group conference coordinators to go out to every region, to every office, and that they really had to sell it initially, because social workers weren't sure it was going to work, right? So we did go out there and let the child protection staff know what family group conference was all about, what it was going to mean. It was going to mean they were going to have to spend a full day somewhere in a church basement, and so on and so forth. But and like your experience, it helps when social workers are trained, and then of course it helps once they've gone through one or two and they see that they can get results.
It's about those results, isn't it? About seeing how it works, and I think the research that's been done in New Brunswick is, for me, enough to say that this works.
Yes,
and we need to get this right, and we need to do it now.
But the problem we've got is social work in the UK deals with risk and deals with child in need and child protection. So until that idea, if you look at sort of children's services in other countries, in Germany, in France, it's very, very different to how we operate here. They don't sort of mainly deal with the child protection, the child in need. It is embedded in early help. Early help is absolutely huge, and I think that's kind of what we're missing with all of the cuts that have taken place, with all, you know, to all of the services, or a lot of the services that are offered at early help. It's very difficult because, yes, we can identify that it needs to be embedded in training and inductions, but until we value that idea of social work, or that, you know, sort of early help is important, we kind of, you know.
but New Brunswick it's been shown to actually save money. Yeah. And so it goes further, doesn't it, than
it does.
traditional services, and so it should be seen as very good value for money by the local authorities if it's done properly.
Yeah, but then, I suppose then it comes down to the local authorities and back to the government, really.
Well,
and us, we can fight it through. Then somebody else, I'm not sure where this person is located. They said, I had a family that early intervention may have suited family group conferencing. However, the mum was worried about domestic violence and coercive control had been a major issue that was guiding and controlling issues around emotional neglect and emotional impact upon the children, and the relationship split between childcare arrangements. I appreciate that family group conferencing would be beneficial in some cases. Still, how would workers go about supporting and ensuring coercive control and manipulation of the victim, mum, and didn't occur as a consequence of family group conference environments?
My experience of working with families where there's been domestic abuse taking place, or coercion and control, the abuser has not been a part of the of the conference, that we just remove him from the situation completely. This is about creating a safe environment for the child and making a plan of moving forward. So, whether the father was involved with the child's life, I don't know, I can't comment, but if that's the case, then no, that we would remove him from the situation, really. And that's not to say, because I've had cases where a father has, due to domestic abuse, the father hasn't been involved. However, as a coordinator, I have gone out and met him and said, is there anything you would like to feed back? So then, the child does feel like
it's still participation in a safe way.
Yes, absolutely,
and absolutely part of your risk assessment.
Yes, absolutely. And that is highlighted as soon as you get a referral through. Who the members of the family are and who's to be contacted and who's not to be contacted and what the risk is.
So of course, the father, or whoever it is, they might need help too, mightn't they? I mean, it's so much anger, as we know, goes back to early childhood and, those kind of deprivation themselves and that they might have experienced. So would there also be a case of somewhere the father getting help as well?
It's difficult really, because as a family group conference, you have to take a step back. We're not involved with the complexities of what has happened, what might happen. So that would be for the social worker involved with that family to deal with that issue. With regards to the conference itself, all I could do is provide assurance that that person wouldn't be involved and wouldn't be in attendance, really. And like you say, for participation, we can feedback anything that they've said positive, but they wouldn't be involved. We wouldn't want to put anybody at risk, especially with coercion and control. Thoughts? Do you have any thoughts?
No, I just think that's very clear. I'm just wondering whether Jerry's still there, might have any thoughts on having experience.
I think the experience is similar in Brunswick. In fact, as I listen to her speak, I'm thinking, wow, it's the same stuff that we're doing here.
Good. I think I might move to Canada. It's harsh. It's very harsh.
It's 20 degrees below.
Oh, okay. Hang on then.
Today it's 29 Celsius.
Oh, wow. 29. Wow. Right.
Do we have any more questions from any others that have attended?
It's been a lively session, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been really.
It's lovely to have Jerry.
Yes, I'm glad that technology was on our side.
Yes.
Brilliant this time. But what I will say is, I think our view is clear that we have a very strong argument that family group conferencing is beneficial not only to the families but to the community, to the government especially. When you see that actually there's 25% reduction in cases that are going through the court proceedings, really, and that there's been millions that have been saved potentially just through this process. And it is a specialist service, and it should be recognised as early as possible within any interventions with families, specifically children, but actually can be rolled out in other forms of social work, so it would be adults' mental health. Actually, this is about people getting together and placing people at the centre and working together as best as possible.
I think it's time now to back it up with everything that we read as students, everything that tells us in the books, that families know best. They know their family better than we do. And, we can keep repeating that, but it's time now to back it up with processes that actually, support that argument.
Yes. And happier, healthier families can go on through the generations, can't it?
Absolutely. It's opening those lines of communication is the first step for some families.
Yes. Brilliant. Thank you both.
No, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Jerry, for being in attendance, and that you were able to succeed through technology.
It's nice to hear somebody, you know.
Yes,
Yeah, and also Mark from the IT as well.
yes. We have a professional officer who's in attendance in the background, sifting through the questions, and has been working really hard. We'd like to thank BASW for giving us the platform to be able to discuss this. Hi, Jerry. You will see at the end of the slides there is a telephone number and an email address, so if you have any more questions on the topic or would want to contact us, then please do. We would encourage you to do so. And again, thank you for being in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.